Sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways.
Run, Forrest, run!
Most people consider getting a life-threatening disease like cancer to be a death sentence, but once in a while, everything can change. The following are real stories of people who were told that they have no hope, only to suddenly be cured without explanation. Here are 10 people who were miraculously cured. Number 1 is Sister Marie Margaret. Sister Marie from the monastery of Rennes, France, had devoted her life to God, but was debilitated with pain as various diseases had her on a slow decline towards death. She was first diagnosed in 1924 with kidney disease at 52 years old, and by 1936, her kidneys were failing, and she had developed angina and oedemia, which is severe swelling in both her legs, as well as difficulty breathing and severe pain in her face. In early 1937, she was showing no signs of improvement and was told that she would soon die. In a last-ditch effort to be healed, she replaced all her medication with Lourdes holy water that had been collected from a spring in the grotto of Massabile in France. It was believed to have healing powers after an apparition of Our Lady of Lourdes blessed it in 1858. Now this may seem far-fetched, but not long after drinking the water, she started to actually get better. And on January 22nd, 1937, during Mass, the oedemia vanished and bandages on her legs fell off, and she was actually able to walk again, completely healed. Number 2 is Greg Thomas. In May of 2009, 56-year-old Greg Thomas from Montgomery, Minnesota, was told to start planning his funeral after he was diagnosed with inoperable stage 4 cancer in his head and neck. He'd gone through countless radiation and chemotherapy treatments, but nothing helped. Things got so bad that he lost his job, had to have all of his teeth removed, and have a feeding tube put in. Having nowhere else to turn, Thomas began taking his dog for long walks on the countryside. On one of their walks, he found an old rundown church. From that point on, he would sit on the church's steps every day and pray for help. He also started volunteering with the church and started to help restore it. But unbelievably, Thomas was surprised to find that the more he worked, the better he felt. Soon, he was taking less and less painkillers each day, and to the shock of his doctors, his tumors actually began to shrink. In 2014, he had his feeding tube removed, and today, he is fully recovered and continues to believe in the power of prayer. Number 3 is David Blancart. After a motorcycle accident almost killed him at the age of 27, David Blancart from Manteca, California, was paralyzed from the waist down and was confined to a wheelchair. However, 20 years later, at 47 years old, he was bitten by a brown recluse spider and everything changed. This spider is common in the United States and may not look like much, but its bite can be super poisonous, causing fever, nausea, and blisters that can break and cause wounds in the size of a human hand. Blancart was rushed to the hospital and had to spend 8 months in physical therapy. One day during his treatment, his nurse noticed spasms in his legs, and Blancart claimed he felt a current course through them. His doctors decided to run a few more tests, and what they found was astonishing. They discovered that his nerves were still alive but just asleep. Sure enough, after his leg braces arrived, he was able to walk again. Number 4 is Mariana Burgeo. By the time Mariana Burgeo was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1962, she had already started to lose coordination and had numbness in her hands. By the age of 30, she'd already been deteriorating for 4 years. Over the next 10 years, she experienced painful headaches, hearing and vision loss, and was incontinent, and had barely even been able to hold up her head without assistance. Mariana was understandably losing hope. That's when a friend invited her to a healing healing meeting led by supposed healing evangelist Catherine Kuhlman. She initially refused to go, but her friend insisted and brought her along in a wheelchair. Marianne would later admit that she didn't remember what happened during the meeting, but she found herself suddenly standing on her own, completely unaided, which was something that she hadn't done in years. With her ability to walk miraculously restored, doctors tested her and found that all of her symptoms were healed. Number 5 is Ruby Graspura Casimiro. After undergoing a C-section on September 23, 2014, 40-year-old Ruby suddenly went into full cardiac arrest. She was immediately placed on a breathing machine and advanced cardiac life support. Her heart was beating, but her blood was not being pumped through her body, and doctors believed it was due to an amniotic fluid embolism. When doctors lost her pulse, Ruby began receiving constant CPR compressions in the hope that her heart would start and work again. Her family waited and prayed for a miracle, but she was without a pulse for a full 45 minutes. Doctors were prepared to call her time of death, but suddenly her heart began to beat again on its own for the first time in over 2 hours. Ruby claimed that while she was unconscious, she felt as if she was floating through a tunnel towards her father, who was surrounded by a bright light, but she felt a force stopping her. 4 days later, with her healthy newborn daughter in her arms, Ruby walked out of the hospital as if nothing happened. Number 6 is Francis Pascal. In December of 1937, 3-year-old Francis Pascal from France was diagnosed with meningitis, which can be fatal to children. The disease left Francis blind with no feeling in his arms and legs. His parents took him to many different doctors in hopes that someone would be able to cure him, but they all gave him the same diagnosis, that the young boy would spend the rest of his life blind and paralyzed. But like a lot of moms out there, Francis's mother wouldn't take no for an answer and decided to rely on her faith instead of just the medical doctors. On August 31st, 1938, she took him to Lourdes, France, and bathed him in the holy healing waters. After he was submerged a second time, not only did he regain the ability to move his limbs, but his sight returned as well. 8 full years had passed before he could visit the Medical Bureau of Verifications with his mother, but in 1946, doctors confirmed that he was, in fact, fully cured. Number 7 is Paul Trousdale. On December 12, 1973, Paul Trousdale, a businessman in his 70s, was admitted to St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. He was admitted for stomach pains and multiple fainting spells. After running tests, doctors diagnosed him with severe gastrointestinal bleeding. The hemorrhaging was so bad that he had to undergo numerous blood transfusions, but doctors were at a loss on how to save him. His wife ended up contacting Reverend John Hinkle, whose church that they had recently started attending on a regular basis, and the three of them began praying together. Once finished, the Reverend announced that Trousdale was fully healed, though the doctors obviously doubted this revelation. However, when they tested him, they found that the bleeding had completely stopped, and there were no further abnormalities in his body. He was completely healed and continued to live a normal life from that day on. Number 8 is Marie Rosenberger. In 1970, 44-year-old Marie Rosenberger from Long Beach, California, began to suffer painful and severe headaches. She decided to go to the doctor, who ran a number of tests, but the results were anything but hopeful, and she was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor. There was a silver lining though, because the doctors were able and willing to operate. She immediately underwent surgery, but unfortunately, the surgeons weren't able to remove all of it, and slowly the tumor started to grow again. Once again, Marie's future looked pretty bad, so her family decided to turn to prayer. One night, her husband had visions of the tumor shrinking and his wife being healed. That morning, she woke up and told him that she was actually feeling better. Believing that it was a sign, she decided to stop taking her medications, and amazingly, she still continued to improve. In 1971, her neurosurgeon confirmed that the tumor had gone away completely and she was miraculously fully healed. Number 9 is Michael Crow. On August 17th, 2012, after 4 days of feeling like he had the flu, 23-year-old Michael Crow from Omaha, Nebraska suddenly became paralyzed. When it happened, he was rushed to the hospital and doctors believed it was an unknown virus that was causing acute myocarditis, which was causing his heart to become inflamed and only able to pump at about 10%. He was told if his condition got any worse, he would need a heart transplant. By the time his new heart was available, Crow's organs had begun to shut down and he was hooked up to a heart and lung machine and was receiving daily blood transfusions. But before he could have a transplant, doctors discovered that Crow actually had toxic blood poisoning, which would stop the transplant from working. As his family prepared for the worst, his blood pressure suddenly began to rise all by itself. His heart slowly started to work on its own again, and within 4 days, his heart had completely healed. The blood virus was gone, and he had no lasting heart tissue damage. And number 10 is Alcides Moreno. On December 7th, 2007, window washer and brothers Edgar and Alcides Moreno fell from the 47th floor of a skyscraper in New York City's Upper East Side when the scaffolding broke beneath them. Edgar was killed immediately, but somehow 37-year-old Alcides survived the fall, but just barely. He was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries and underwent emergency surgery to try to save his life. He was given 24 pints of blood, 19 pints of plasma, and had a total of 9 operations, but doctors still had Moreno's odds of survival at less than 1%. Doctors weren't hopeful and he was in a vegetative state, hooked up to machines keeping him alive for 2 weeks. But then, on Christmas Day, he baffled doctors by moving and speaking. Since then, he made a full recovery, one that was so unexpected that he had medical experts with decades of experience calling it simply miraculous. So, those were 10 people who were miraculously cured. But I want to know from you, do you believe that these events were the result of a higher power, or were they simply the power of the human body? Leave a comment below because I'll be reading through them and I'll pin the best one to the top. But as always, thank you guys so much for coming by today. Remember to come back tomorrow and every weekday at exactly 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time because I'll have a brand new video for you. I'll see you then.